In addition to constructing 9 new rail lines, Vietnam has lofty goals of updating and renovating all of the nation's railroads, as well as modernizing the whole system. The goal is to construct a massive rail network similar to that of China, which will assist in the rapid expansion of the domestic economy. One of these is the construction of a train that will follow the boundary of the nation. Cost up to $58.07 billion US dollars and stretch a total of 1545 kilometers. The first transnational railroad in Vietnam will be constructed as part of this project. The railway will connect the center region of Vietnam to the capital city of Vietnam to the capital city of Vientiane in Laos. When it is completed, it will serve to foster an increase in the amount of commerce that occurs between the two parties. There is no doubt that this endeavor is beneficial to everyone. The two groups, however, were unable to come to a decision over which nation should be awarded the project. Laos and Vietnam both want it to be built by China, although Vietnam would rather that it be built by Japan. The answer to this question is that the two countries work together to build a railroad. The expansion of commercial activity and economic growth in both countries is one of the primary motivations for Vietnam's decision to build a railway to Laos. If you are familiar with Vietnam, you are probably aware that throughout its history, it has been regarded as one of the nations that has the highest levels of poverty. The average income of the populace in this area is pitifully low. Many individuals from Vietnam make the journey over the border to find work in the province of Guangxi in China. Employees in large Chinese enterprises often earn close to $2,000 a month in salary and benefits. The majority of Vietnamese households may benefit from consistent wages provided by cross-border work. Nevertheless, it has been abundantly obvious over the course of the last 10 years that Vietnam is entering a new century as a direct result of the tremendous acceleration of the country's economy. The reason for this is that China's labor costs are always going up. Enterprises from a number of countries in Europe, as well as a number of significant Chinese businesses, have relocated to Vietnam. They made the decision to construct factories in Vietnam since the nation offers labor at a cheap rate, which continues to be a support for most enterprises, and the country's labor costs are far lower than those in China and Europe. In addition, as part of its trade strategy, the Vietnamese government has reduced or exempted relevant taxes for international companies, which is an alternative that is attractive for significant corporations. This is done in order to foster the expansion of the nation's domestic manufacturing sector. Because of this, a large number of enterprises have relocated to Vietnam, which has led to an increase in the country's gross domestic product, GDP, at a pace that is larger than 8, and a pace that is larger than 80 and much higher than that of Japan and South Korea. The development of Vietnam's economy, on the other hand, has been hampered by the country's antiquated infrastructure. There are only 7 international airports in Vietnam. There are only 7 railways in Vietnam that are regarded as a colonial legacy that France left behind for Vietnam, and there is no swift, high-speed train in the surrounding area. After the country gained its independence, new railroad lines in Vietnam were only built for a total of 500 kilometers, suggesting that the country's infrastructure is not yet fully developed. Given the present rate of economic growth in Vietnam, it is imperative that the country increase the size of its railway network. Constructing railroads that cross international borders is another important step that has to be taken if we want transportation to become a driving force behind economic expansion. This year saw yet another drop in the total value of goods imported and exported by Vietnam. The combined value of imports and exports fell by 14.6% from the previous month, bringing the total to $29.82 billion in September. In October, there was no discernible improvement to report on the new crown epidemic. The first half of October had a 12.6% decrease in revenue when compared to the second half of September. The existence of such material illustrates quite clearly how worrying the current economic situation in Vietnam is, because of the consequences of a variety of causes, including the recent epidemic of crown pneumonia. Vietnam has an immediate and critical need to improve its trade import and export channels. Laos, which is located nearby, suffered from the same problem due to its insufficient transportation infrastructure. However, as a result of China's assistance in the nation's railway building, the value of international freight transportation between China and Laos has topped 10 billion yuan renminbi in less than a year and a half. This has lately had a stimulating effect on Vietnam. a neighboring nation, and Vietnam is quite excited about the prospect of constructing a railway that crosses its border with Laos. It has come to light that a railroad will be constructed in order to link Vietnam and Laos together. It is anticipated that the railroad would start carrying passengers in 2019, boasting a total length of 554 kilometers and an estimated cost of at least $6 billion US. However, as of right present, the two groups have divergent opinions over who will build the railway. Because China has provided assistance to Laos in the construction of the railway, Laos anticipates continuing to collaborate with China to bring the project to a successful conclusion. They have a good understanding of the Chinese engineering team and believe China to be an extremely reliable partner. They express their gratitude to China for helping to improve the living conditions of their people. Vietnam, on the other hand, wanted Japan to be the country that built the essential railroad. The idea that Vietnam would like to work together with Japan is not completely illogical. Japan has been Vietnam's most important trading partner, second largest investor, and primary source of funds for government-sponsored development assistance throughout the country's history. Both parties have, for a considerable amount of time, kept their relations amicable. In addition, Japan is a leader in the construction of railroads across the world. They beat China to the construction of their first railway as well as their first high-speed train. Vietnam anticipates that Japan would construct the railway because it believes that Japanese technology is more developed and advanced than any other countries. In the current standoff between the two sides, I believe that the best way to go would be for China to build the railway in Laos and for Japan to build the railway in Vietnam. This would be the most prudent course of action. What kinds of changes would occur in Vietnam and Laos as a result of the successful construction of the railway connecting the two countries? The following is a synopsis of the three primary aspects that comprise the possible benefits that the railway may provide to the two countries. The first thing to do is to increase the number of commercial encounters. Our working hypothesis is that the construction of this railroad will result in the establishment of a direct connection between the freight markets of Thailand and Myanmar. In addition to this, there are ports in Vietnam that are quite handy. Because of the connectivity between these regions, delivering items to ports may be done at the lowest possible cost. In addition, there is need for improvement in the way that commodities are handled when being shipped to the Southeast Asian market. The trading of freight ought to take place at a more rapid pace. Exporters from the Asian countries are now seeing the greatest demand for their products in the European market. Nevertheless, if there is no railroad that connects Vietnam and Laos, Asian exporters will only be able to ship their goods out of the region through the port of Singapore. If the transportation is handled from the port of Singapore, the calculations indicate that the entire cycle will take a total of 45 days to complete. This is the equivalent of going on a trip that lasts for a month and a half. If the project known as the Trans-Asian Railway is successful, exporters from the Asian countries won't face the same challenges. The reason for this is that by that time, Southeast Asia and Europe will be connected through the usage of land transportation. If Asian exporters use rail transportation, it will only take around 10 days for their products to arrive in the European area from the time they ship them. The third justification is that the construction of the railway linking Laos and Vietnam has the potential to strengthen ties not only between those two countries, but also throughout the entirety of the Asian and Eurasian region. Because the construction of this railway would make it easier to travel between various Asian members and the markets in Asia and Europe, this project should be prioritized. In addition, the Pan-Asian Railway Network can be found right behind this particular railway. All of these will ultimately lead to deeper and more frequent exchanges between a wide variety of nations. Because of this, the nations that Vietnam and Laos are connected to via railway are also significantly impacted by the railways in both of these countries. As a direct consequence of these circumstances, countries from all over the world are focusing more of their attention on the construction of railways in Vietnam and Laos. Even though the two parties have not yet come to an agreement regarding who will build the structure, the world has been looking forward to this project. Who do you believe will be more skilled in the construction of this enormous project? Then subscribe to this channel to watch all the newest projects. One of the first